ComC is your home for buying, selling, and flipping all the hottest trading cards. Their consignment marketplace is home to over 27 million cards across all sports, genres, and eras. With a ComC account, you can purchase cards from different sellers over time and ship them home together later, or immediately reprice them for sale on the ComC marketplace. To stay updated with ComC, please follow them on social media at CheckOutMyCards, one word, on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. To learn about offers, promotions, and more at ComC, please visit blog.comc.com. You're listening to the WaxPackHero Sports Card Minute, a podcast where we discuss both the hobby and business sides of collecting. I'm your host, Mike Sommer, and I want to help you buy, sell, and trade your way into a collection you'll love. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the WaxPackHero Sports Card Minute. Wherever you are and whenever you're listening to this, I hope you are having a great day. Well, for the last few episodes, I've been starting off the podcast with kind of a recap of my hobby activities. And my hobby activities over the last week or so have been fairly muted. And that's because after 2 years, it finally got me. I came down with a case of COVID this last week, and so I've been spending some time trying to recover. Fortunately, it wasn't too terrible. It was fairly mild. I've been vaccinated and boosted, and I think that kept symptoms pretty mild. You know, a couple days of pretty uncomfortable feelings and some aches and pains and things like that. But for the most part, the rest of the week has just been kind of mildly irritating that I'm not able to do some things and needing to stay away from the general public as my body clears this virus. But I think I am on the road to recovery now. Things are pretty well cleared up, and I should hopefully be able to get back to normal here next week. But that's been kind of my week this last week, and so I haven't had a whole lot of energy to do some of the other hobby activities that I'm often doing. So not as many good stories to tell from that, but fortunately, I think things are improving here from a COVID perspective. Well, that is not the topic that I want to cover. That is not the main thing that I'm going to be talking about today. I want to revisit a topic that's more on that business side of collecting again. And the idea that I want to discuss today is something that comes up quite a bit in conversations about both the hobby and life in general. And it often comes up when people are frustrated about the escalating prices and values of cards, or the cost that it takes to collect in the hobby today, or even this idea of, do I want to go into the business side of the hobby as well? Do I want to try to buy and sell cards to make money? This topic comes up a lot. And I think the question that summarizes the sentiment that I hear is, does it take money to make money? It seems like anytime a conversation about entrepreneurship, wealth, investing, or personal finance comes up, someone throws out the axiom, well, it takes money to make money, and I call BS. More often than not, that is a cop-out for someone who's not willing to put in the work. Now, I'm not going to argue with anyone who says it's easier to make money if you're already starting with a lot of money. Yeah, it's true that there's certain investments which have a minimum threshold that you need to invest, and there's often a substantial level of assets needed before you can throw off meaningful income. And it can be easier to start a side hustle if you've got some sort of cash ready on hand to start things up. The problem comes when you make the assumption that you can't succeed unless you're starting with a lot of money. In my opinion, that is garbage and a lazy excuse. Even if you're starting with nothing, you can succeed if you're willing to hustle and put in the work. Get rich quick is for losers. Success takes time, patience, and a willingness to work hard. I'll talk a little bit more about this after I tell you about Underdog Collectibles, the online shop run by collectors for collectors that breaks new product every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday night. You can find out what they're going to be breaking this week by visiting them at udogcollect.com, where you can see the full lineup of breaks. You can also visit them on their shop in Knoxville, Tennessee, to see their full selection of wax, singles, and you can even watch some of those breaks live and in the shop. And if you're interested in submitting to SGC, they are an approved group submitter to SGC, and you can learn more about that process by visiting them at udogcollect.com as well. And when you do, make sure you tell them that WaxPackHero sent you. All right, before we go too much farther, let me start by clarifying something. If you're someone who approaches cards purely from a hobby perspective, and you're going to pay whatever it costs to collect the cards that you love, you're not too concerned about that, and you have no interest in getting into the business side of the hobby, then this topic really isn't for you. I'm intending this topic to be for those who fancy themselves as quote unquote investors or business people in the hobby, people who want to be profitable buying and selling cards, being a dealer. That's the main focus of the people that I want to talk with today. Now, I welcome you to stay because maybe you'll be inspired to get that idea that it's possible to do some, even a moderate level of buying and selling to be able to generate some profits to cover the cost of those cards that you want to keep for your hobby. But I want to reassure you that I'm talking more to the people who are approaching this from a business side when I talk about this topic. Now, a lot of people think that they would love to do this, and that's where their passion and desire are, but that they don't have enough money to get started. And that's the foundational falsehood of this whole thing. There are hundreds and hundreds of YouTube videos out there that talk about how people start with 10 or 20 bucks, 50 bucks even, and start going to thrift sales, garage sales, things like that, and then buying items and reselling them online for profit. Heck, there's people that are making their full-time living doing that at this point. If you don't have 50 bucks to get started, well, everyone has junk around their house or apartment that could be sold to get things rolling. Now, I fell in love with cards again in 2016, and it didn't take long before I realized if I wanted to afford everything that I wanted to collect, I'd need to generate some extra income to offset that cost. And I did two things to get things rolling. First, I started flipping cards on eBay, which I picked up out of the dime, quarter, and dollar boxes at my LCS at the time. Dimes turned into quarters, quarters turned into dollars, and dollars started turning into $5 and $10 bills. I built my card fund with lots and lots of these transactions, and it took work. But eventually I'd saved up a couple $100 and bought my first collection to flip. I think it was actually, I've talked about this before, I think it was somewhere between 90 and 100, right around $100. Eventually, I doubled my money on it, and then I repeated that process over and over. Later that year, I also discovered ComC.com and deposited $10 onto ComC. And I started by buying nickel cards and selling them for a 2 or 3 cent profit. I did some of the on-site challenges for store credit and eventually turned that $10 into an inventory of thousands of cards. It wasn't overnight, and it took work. Now, just on ComC, when I first did that, it was thousands of cards, a $10 deposit that I built up, over and over again. And I was looking back at a screenshot that I took in 2019. And so in 3 years, I went from that $10 deposit to 3,800 cards with an asking price of about $5,000. Fast forward another 3 years, and I'm now up to an inventory of 110,000 cards with an asking price of almost $67,000. And again, that's all starting with a $10 deposit. Now, along the way, especially with my recent ComC sponsorship opportunity, I have some additional store credit that gets deposited, but I've mainly used that to buy some PC items for myself to ship home. And so the resale inventory is still pretty much all starting from that original $10 deposit. So $10 into $66,754.90 of inventory just on ComC alone. That doesn't even go to talk about the other things that I've been doing. So that's ComC. In addition to buying and selling cards, side money can be made from producing content. And part of the inspiration for WaxPackHero.com, the website, before I even started doing this podcast, came from the T-Dards podcast on SportsCardRadio.com. And I had been listening to them since I returned to the hobby, and they basically were giving free lessons on how to buy and sell cards, how to build a website, and create content. And this is another example of something that takes time and effort to build. And I have a long way to go before this site and this podcast have the same level of success as some of the other hobby podcasts, but I'm going to get there by continuing to produce free content for readers and listeners to enjoy. And once again, I owe them a big thanks for providing some of that inspiration for creating content. I also turn trash into treasure, as I've talked about before, but just to reiterate and summarize on this podcast, I sell a ton of cards on Sportlots. And that site, again, specializes in basin inserts, and it has a pretty decent following from set builders and player collectors. The great thing about base cards is the fact that so many people treat them as garbage. I realized I could use the profits I was slowly building to buy large collections of unwanted basin insert cards for a fraction of a penny a piece and resell them on Sportlots for somewhere between 25 cents and $1. At this point, again, in about 5 to 6 years, I've built an inventory of over 273,000 cards on Sportlots, and I'm selling 2,000 to 3,000 of those cards a month, most of which for somewhere between 18 cents and $1. On top of ComC and Sportlots, add on the inventory that I've got for sale on eBay and all of the inventory that I've got at the shop. And overall, in the last 6 years, since I started being serious about making a self-sustaining hobby, I've turned that initial couple $100 into 6 figures worth of paid-for inventory that's been all paid for with profits, along with a ton of cool items that I've been able to add to my PC. Now, it takes time to grind your way up. As I've talked about, this has been a 6-year journey so far, and I figure I've got at least another 10 more years before I'm able to retire from my full-time job, and I want to continue to grind for the next 10 years along the way. It's only going to help that process of my retirement, provide me an additional source of income in retirement, but you've got to put in the work, and you've got to be patient, and you've got to grind your way up. There's no getting around it. Now, fortunately for me, my brain is wired to get personal satisfaction from this grind. I get a sense of accomplishment knowing that my 1971 Topps set was built on the profits I made from flipping cards. The Grail 1986 Jordan rookie that I was able to get. I get satisfaction knowing that that was completely paid for with profits from this grind. Building something from nothing is a hobby and a form of entertainment for me. But saying that you don't have time to hustle and grind is an excuse that's used by many people. Often it's not a lack of time, it's a lack of priorities. You can find time if you really want it. Get up an hour earlier, stay up an hour later. Quit watching hours and hours of Netflix and reality TV. If you don't want to prioritize your time this way, that's fine. Everyone has things that are more important and less important to them. But just don't use that as an excuse for why you can't make money on a side hustle. It's a choice you're making in prioritizing your time. So if you're willing to put in the work, it's possible to start small and to add some cash to your wallet and some cool cards to your collection.
Like the athletes we admire, the Sports Card Shop is changing the game. We're not launching threes, bombing drives, or hitting dingers, but we have built a unique gathering spot for all collectors to trade cards, talk sports, play games, and watch their favorite athletes on the big screens. Yes, we've partnered with Panini, Upper Deck, Leaf, Topps, Fanatics, Pokemon, and others to bring you all the latest in sealed wax and singles. But the Sports Card Shop in New Buffalo, Michigan is much, much more. Our recent expansion brings collectible sneakers, Hot Wheels, and more sports and entertainment memorabilia into the mix. Our new Collector's Cave game room is the perfect place to throw a rip party, bring friends, rip packs, trade cards, play billiards, ping pong, shuffleboard, classic arcade, and Xbox games, all while watching your favorite sport on TV. Visit us at thesportscardshop.com. Follow us on social @_sportscardshop, or better yet, visit us in person to learn about special events, party packages, new products, and everything we're doing for you. The Sports Card Shop, connecting people, sports, and the hobby around the world.
I'm not getting rich on cards. However, this side hustle is making my hobby completely pay for itself while generating enough extra cash flow to pay for some toys like this iMac that I'm recording the podcast on. That cash flow is only going to grow over time, and the cool cards in my collection are going to be growing as well. So what about you? Will you join me in the cardboard hustle? I hope you do, but statistics say that most of you probably won't. And for those that do, I want to hear about it. I want to celebrate those flips with you. I want to celebrate those successes with you. I want to see those collections that you've been able to pick up, add cool cards to your collection for free. I want to hear your stories of succeeding with the cardboard hustle. Send me an email at waxpackhero@gmail.com. Tweet me your flips at @TheMikeSummer. Reach out to me on TikTok and Instagram at WaxPackHero. I would love to hear your story. Well, that is all I have for you today, so I'll catch you next time.